Can I start a civil war? Good question. Is it possible? You know, hypothetically now, before anyone gets any bright ideas, be like, you can't start a civil war, you faggot bastard, or be like, you and your generation, too silver spoon and blah blah blah. Quiet. This is hype now. You know, how would somebody like me start a civil war? Good question. All right. And I know the FBI must be watching me and whatnot. I don't give a damn. I know how to build a nuke. They know how to build a nuke. They have nukes. Blah, blah, blah. Th- Listen to me. Unless they're busting down my door, I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm not a threat. Nor do I plan on being one because as soon as I can, I'm just going to, head on somewhere. God only knows where. Live the rest of my days probably out in the woods or just traveling. Because you know, I don't really care. If a civil war breaks out, I'm not fighting on anybody's side. I'm just going to try and do my damnness to stay alive. All right. If Democrats, Republicans start killing each other, or white people or black people, or somebody somewhere starts a race war, I'm not fighting for anybody. You know, sure, don't get me wrong. I'm going to try and save as many people that looks like me as humanly possible because, well, I don't want my race to die. I would also, go out of my way and save a bunch of black folks, Muslims, Mexicans, you name it, because I'm human, you know, and I can't really stand the idea of somebody dying in front of me. If I can, I would try and prevent death from all hell and back, as much as I can. So, this is a hypothetical video. So, getting that out of the damn way before anybody start, with their greasy fingers, start typing in the comments and being a, social justice warrior in the comments and, or like a Republican asset that, that likes Cheeto does be like, you can't, quiet. So, how would I start a civil war? The answer is simple. You know, First off, since I live in a capitalist country, I would use capitalism to my advantage. And what advantage would that be? Well, you got trailer parks, right? Right. Now, if I were to play my cards right, build myself a trailer park or apartment complex of some sort, my own private town or city, put it simply, you know, I would, if I could, like, as it's one of those, once you have your ability to get your hands on a, you know, privatized town, a private, homemade city, basically, you know, next thing you know, you got yourself a little city state to work with. You know, next thing is getting the population on board. Not on board with the idea of going to war at first, but on board with the idea of being declared independence. You know, that's the thing. You got to have a population that's willing to fight for the cause. You got to have a cause, for your population to fight for. It's one of those self-feeding systems. If you don't have a cause, then there's no point in, like in starting a civil war. For example, let's say hypothetically here, let's say I wanted to start a race war. All right, you know, let's say I'm a black person. I wanted to start a race war against white people and try and genocide all white folks. Then I would have to build an entire extremist group of like-minded individuals that has extremist ideology that wants to genocide white people from all hell and back. And since and the reason why I'm using genocide white people from all hell and back is because it's popular to talk about killing white folks nowadays, despite the fact that it's the same thing as Muslims killing Jews, screaming "kill the Jews" or screaming anti-Semitic bullshit like that. Fucking racist bastards. Not the point. Anywho, so you have your extreme. You have, let's say, 10,000 fellow black people, like-minded black folks, that wants to genocide white people. Congrats, you got yourself an army. You got yourself a cause to work behind. A cause that can recruit other folk, other like-minded individuals. Now you have a system that could basically keep fighting until the last man or the last woman, depending on which extreme group you're willing to go by. Are you willing to go by, the entire population fighting against another population, women, men, and children? Or are you willing to go to noble routes and only have your men, go on this genocidal rampage while the women take care of the children and raising the next generation of soldiers? So, either way it goes, that's one thing. Another Civil War case, is how Texas is wanting to defend its borders against, drugs, cartels, and illegal migrant crossings, while the, federal government is like not at all having it. That entire scenario could spark a civil war as well, because every like the governor, Governor Abbott, he wants, you know, security for his state, you know, and every southern country want I'm not southern country, every southern state, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and all of them support Texas. About 25 U.S. states support Texas in their decision in regards to defending our borders, building that, boundary against, illegal immigration. Now, that in itself could see an entire state versus state civil war. You know, you also have, cities versus, countryside, you know, besides, that, like democratic cities deciding, enough is enough, let's go to war with the rest of the country, because, they're not forcing our values upon, their civilians. Like, you have that type of civil war. So, there's multiple of types of civil wars. But once again, if we're talking about, like a random hillbilly Joe, like Billy Joe or Billy Bob or Billy this or Billy that, some dumbass on the road somewhere wanting to start his own civil war, start his own, little country type of scenario. Well, here's the funny thing. Like I said about the capitalist bit and the Second Amendment, you see, the fun bit is that you can start your own country, your own little city state. Let's say you start your own little city state, on the Gulf of Mexico, bordering the Gulf of Mexico and everything. Then you can do what the Dutch did and what the Aztecs did and basically expand your civilization into the Gulf of Mexico, you know, and basically reclaim land from the Gulf of Mexico and, do what the Dutch did and just expand into the Gulf of Mexico as you expand your little city state. Now, here's the fun bit. United States, they're going to laugh at your city state, you know, and they're not going to worry about it too much unless you start making moves such as not paying taxes, you know, like preventing law enforcement to, move and investigate and enforce law and whatnot and stuff. Because then the United States would have a problem with it, and then they would try and arrest you. And then that could hypothetically lead to a civil war, even though you declared independence and declared yourself a sovereign territory and so on and so forth. If the United States won't respect it, then that could lead into a civil war for you and your city state. But yeah, with the use of capitalism, you can hypothetically create yourself a nice good city state, you know, and depending on where you started and depending on how big it is will determine on how successful it might be. So, but here's the thing though, you know, like speaking of independent countries, there's several micro states, like micro countries throughout the United States that ain't recognized by the United States, but there's like several, you know, micro nations throughout the United States and throughout the world. So there's that. So, and my only recommendation is that if you do decide to create your own little city state, you know, money's the best talker when it comes to hiring bodyguards and people to enforce your, rule of thumb or rule of law or however you want to put it upon people. Developing your own little militia with your city state will be the best way to defend it from the United States whenever that time comes around. So, yeah. Now, like I said, you can't have a civil war without having a cause. You can't have a civil war without having a place to start from. Another place to start from would be a prison. You know, if you can rally up, a bunch of prisoners in a prison, then you can start a civil war from said prison if you can take that prison over in a specific time frame. That's another important part. It's all about timing. All right? If you can take over a prison within 30 minutes to an hour, then you can start sending splinter cells off in every which direction. You know, like have a group of people holding on to that prison, and arming themselves and blockading entrances and whatnot, and creating a kill funnel and so on and so forth in that prison, while at the same time sending people out to other prisons to create a chain reaction, a domino effect. Now, I gotta rearrange. Now, of course, of course, this requires you to have everyone on board. So you can do all of the self discipline, all of the bullshit discipline you want for your own body, but and you can have at least 10, 20, 30 people on your side that is willing to fight for you for free and whatnot, you know. But to get 100 to 1,000 people to fight for you, you gotta have money. You know, to get, you know, more than a couple thousand people to fight for you, like for example, 500,000 or a couple million to fight for you to carve out your own little country, is here's the thing. If you're fighting against the United States, you're not going to be able to take it over. That's not happening. Even I can concede that's not happening. You can, have yourself, a territory that you think you'll be able to, carve out and control, but, you know, trying to take over the entirety of the United States, facing down one of the world's most powerful countries ain't happening. You're not taking that entire country over unless you cut it in half and goes, you know, from the center, being the Mississippi River, to the East Coast and then to the West Coast. But that desert, to the in between you and the West Coast, as well as that mountain range, that's going to prevent you from taking over the West Coast easily. That Mississippi River, however, is going to help you take over the entire East Coast with little to no issue. The only problem is swamps. The entire, everything south of the Dixie line, nothing but swamps. And everything north, tundra, basically. You know, I mean, not it's not that cold, but it's not that warm. It's not that wet either. It's like average woodlands, basically. So yeah. But like I said in one of my many videos, it's all about knowledge. Having a very strategic, logistic based mindset. You know, so but of course, like I done said, if you don't have the money, don't have the cause that you want people to follow, you don't have money, cause, military backing, none of that. Military backing is an important one. And if you're going to go against the United States, there's only a few allies you could hypothetically work with, and none of them, could ever be trusted. For example, China and Russia being the two biggest allies that you could hypothetically get. Then you have, nearby allies you could hypothetically get being Venezuela and Cuba. And that ain't happening. You know, it's one of them. It's not happening, bruh. Because the last and final ally you could hypothetically get is, well, cartels. Good luck, because then you'll become a cartel puppet, and your entire cause will be absorbed by the cartels. So, like I said, your best bet would be to buy a plot of land next to the Gulf of Mexico and just declare that to be your independent country. And, you know, and after a while, after developing it enough where it can be independent from the United States, from having its own farms, seaports, to, you know, like power plants, you know, fresh water source and whatnot. Everything it needs to be considered an independent country so it can have its independence from the United States. Well, after setting it up like that, you know, develop your little military, you know, build up the border that you want with the United States, and then declare anything and everything past that border to be yours and your people's. So, and if the United States laughs, then they laugh. If they send in, people to come and get you and your citizens because they ain't paying taxes, well, that gives you all the rights, as an independent entity to fight back. You know, but my biggest suggestion is as soon as you write that independence, letter to Congress, you know, send a diplomat of your choosing to the nearest anti-United States country, being Cuba or Venezuela, and you know, and set up a military pact with their asses. So, yeah. that's all I have to say. Now, back to the keyboard warriors. I know exactly what you're going to say. You know, I know y'all going to say it even if I were to, tell you don't. But like I said earlier in the video, like I stressed from the beginning, this is a hypothetical. All right? It's a hypothetical. And I don't have to tell you that, you don't need a darn sergeant screaming in your face to do push ups. Anybody can do push ups. Anybody can do 100 push ups. Anybody can, walk 5 kilometers or 5 miles. Anybody can walk 10 to 100 miles. Anybody can do what a military person does. They just have to have the willpower to do it. you know, anybody can, train themselves to have the same level of military training as a military personnel. All right. So, yeah. And don't say that, oh, well, no, they can't. That's you being naive. All right. That's you being naive and assuming that United States is safe from having a civil war because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the United States is headed down one way or another. Either a race war because we have too much diversity, and I'm sorry, but diversity ain't good, if you don't have any unifying factor to it. If you have nothing to unify your entire diverse group of people, you know, it's just a matter of time before they all start killing each other. Just like in Ethiopia, just like in Sudan, just like in Iraq, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Well, Saudi Arabia ain't killing each other right now. It's Syria. I don't know why I get those two mixed up. They're two absolutely different countries. But anyway, you get the point. Diversity didn't work for those countries. South America, not South America, South Africa, you know, it's diverse and it's a failed state. So, and the reason being is because their governments is trying to cater to one particular group at a time. They are doing identity politics. They're all about identity politics, and you don't do identity politics if you want your people to not try and rebel against you. You don't do identity politics. You throw that shit to the waist side, and you focus on what would unify people. You know, focus on unifying culture. A unifying identity, something that people can rally behind. If you don't want a civil war, and the United States is fucking dancing with the devil right now. It'll probably be 25, 50 years from now before we have a civil war. But, if nothing is done, somebody somewhere with ambition is going to start a civil war in the United States. And millions are going to die. And like I done said in the beginning of this video, or in this video in general, if a civil war happens, yours truly will not be the one that causes it and will not be fighting on anyone's side. I'll be fighting for myself and my own cause. Everyone else can go fuck themselves. So with that said, might as well end the video here with that note. Because, if I die tomorrow, so be it. If I die in a civil war, so be it. If somebody somewhere puts a bullet in between my eyes, so be it. But like I said, I will not be fighting your cause, I will not be fighting anyone's causes except my own. And my cause is to survive. End of story. Not to start a civil war, not to finish one, but to fucking survive. And if I create my own country in the process, hilarious. That would be fucking that would be the day. Even I would be outright surprised if that were to happen. But yeah.